we've learned now the new details about the Jon Gruden email story from a couple years ago. More information about this congressional report containing testimony that claimed that Dan Snyder, Danny Boy, was the person that leaked the infamous Jon Gruden emails as an attempt to try to divert attention from the scandal involving his team. It used to be called the Redskins, but they changed that. Couldn't call it that anymore. Now, in a wordy story from the fledgling sports network out of Bristol, Connecticut, apparently they haven't fired everyone. There's still some people working there that put the story together. So they lay out the case. But it's not just Dan Snyder. In this story, they're all over the place. They've got the NFL PA boss, DeMaurice Smith. He is alleged to have bragged that he was responsible for leaking the emails, and then there's others. So the story's all over. It's helter-skelter, claiming that the actual leaker's identity remains unknown. Despite reading this 7,000-word story, we don't know who leaked it. And everyone's pointing at each other. It's like the Spider-Man meme where they point at each other. So let us discuss the question. What is the big takeaway? What's the big takeaway from this Jon Gruden scandal update? So I've got blues singer, Mulligan Man, and artificially made. And we will combine all of these things together, and we are going to make a vote, because you can vote for the winner of the Mallerpalooza. Now, we already voted. We'll have more on that coming up, but we already voted on the show last night. But if you missed it, go back and get that podcast. The vote is open. More information on that coming up. But, again, the question, what's the big takeaway? What is the big takeaway from this Jon Gruden scandal update? So, A, my head was spinning round and round and round like a merry-go-round from reading this story. It reads like an episode of Billions or something. It's wealth, it's power porn, if you will. Jon Gruden and Roger Goodell, if you believe the story, hated each other's guts. And Gruden despised Roger Goodell before Roger Goodell was the commissioner of the NFL. Gruden's emails, the emails that the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal put out a couple years ago, they contained, there were emails between him and some of his friends, racist, homophobic, and misogynist. I think that's the big three remarks. And those were weaponized against Gruden because Gruden had enemies in high places.
Racist.
Also states that Al Davis, who's been dead for over a decade, apparently Al's spinning in his grave right now. He died in 2011, but he also played a role in this vitriol between Jon Gruden and the league office. Now, it goes into details. Is Mark Davis, the spawn of Al and the polyester jumpsuit-wearing owner, Al Davis, his son Mark Davis, did not want to fire Jon Gruden, but felt that he had no choice because of lesbian WNBA players. And Carl Nassib, the gay Raider. They felt like he had to do it because of what Jon Gruden had said in the email leak, the homophobic stuff that he had to get rid of Gruden. And so and it also lays out a map that says the email leak was the final body blow that led to Dan Snyder being forced to sell the Commanders. So there's a lot of stretching going on. It's a humdinger of a story. And so to sum it up, it's really channeling the spirit of a blues singer, Muddy Waters. My intuition, reading this Jon Gruden expose, is that the NFL helped facilitate the story. And while it certainly makes them look petty and shallow as a league, it accomplishes the main mission, something bigger. And the NFL don't really care if you think they're petty and shallow. Not that many people are actually going to read that story. Most people have a worse attention span than a goldfish. So you're not going to read a wordy story about what goes on in the palace intrigue of the NFL. You might hear some gasbagger blowhard like me talk about it, but the accomplishment is it helps torpedo Jon Gruden's lawsuit against the Shield and Roger Goodell. It blurs the lines, obfuscating what actually happened. Because if you read this story, on one part of the story, you're going to think, well, DeMaurice Smith leaked some email. Then in another part, you're going to be like, nah, it was Dan Snyder. And then there's someone else named Desire Perez. I don't know who that is. She's apparently a CEO for Jay-Z's Rock Nation. Never heard of this person. But that person also mentioned as someone who leaked some emails. So the story does help undermine the Jon Gruden lawsuit as he goes scorched earth against the NFL. But I'm pulling for Jon Gruden. Why not? And we'll see how that goes as he continues his legal fight. Not backing down. Not backing down, Jon Gruden. Now, turning the page on that. The next stop here, we're going to go away from Jon Gruden. We're going to Minnesota. The Vikings receiver, Justin Jefferson, was recently asked to rank the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. He said, well, who cares about that? Well, it's the perfect time of the year. Now, I don't do List Radio, but Justin Jefferson does List Radio, the Viking wide receiver. So Jefferson, who's by any account, any measurement, a top 5 receiver in the NFL, but what about the quarterback? So at number one, he had Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes as his number 1. That's kind of okay. Number 2 was Aaron Rodgers. Number 3, Joe Burrow. Number 4, Jalen Hurts. And number 5, Josh Allen. You know who's not on the list? Ding, 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 ding. Yes, Kirk Cousins. Who happens to play quarterback for who? That's right, the Purple People Eaters. So how much trouble is Justin Jefferson in for omitting Kirk Cousins, his quarterback, from his top 5 list? So the amount of trouble that Justin Jefferson is in is zero. The bluster over this story, which is passed around a little bit, I find amusing. The only name on that list that does not belong there in real time is Aaron Rodgers, because Aaron Rodgers was not only a quarterback in Wisconsin last year, he sucked at a time you cannot suck for Green Bay. And by his account, and by all accounts, he was not that good. And head-to-head, Cousins, who did not have a stellar year last year either, was better in most statistical categories head-to-head. Regardless, Justin Jefferson in this story is like the mulligan man. He gets a mulligan. You get a mulligan, a big mulligan, and another mulligan. Why? He's good. And when you're good, it doesn't matter. Kirk Cousins will be feeding him extra targets when the Vikings start playing, because this story is just subterfuge. All right, last word here. So let's move on. Franchise tag. Oh, it's so exciting. Less than a week away. Tell me you're not a little excited. We're less than a week away from the franchise tag extension deadline, and we have the Three Musketeers. The Three Musketeers who have not signed their franchise tender. Saquon Barkley of the New Jersey Giants, Evan Ingram of your Jacksonville Jags, and from the Raiders, Josh Jacobs. That's it. That's the list. Now, if no extensions are inked by Monday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time Monday deadline, the 3 players, the Three Musketeers, will not be obligated to show up to training camp, which starts also for most teams next week. It's been floated that Saquon Barkley is going to stay away from the Giants, and he will not show up, and he'll miss week 1, that he will not be available. Giants open up in a game that's going to get a little juice against the Dallas Cowboys, and that is said to be in serious peril in a no extension likely to be agreed upon. So level of concern about Saquon Barkley missing the Giants opener on the Maller scale of worry, 1 to 10, with 10 being, oh my God, we're screwed. I'm at a 2. I look at this storyline, I look at the calendar, and I say, this is artificially made. That's what I'm thinking on this one. Right? Contrived for just before training camp. Story could have been written 4 months ago. If Saquon Barkley wants to leave money on the table, good luck. Right? Mazel tov. You're not a mensch if you do that, but we're talking about a game check. Now, I think of a check as a reasonable amount of money, but when you're a professional athlete, it's not a reasonable amount of money. It's a lottery payment. Saquon Barkley, every game check, $560,000. So he would have to walk away from over $500,000 to make some kind of stand against the man in the NFL. I just made a lot of money. But I don't care how much money you've made. $560,000. Unless you're Elon Musk or Zuckerberg or one of those dopes, that's crazy money for one check. But it's his right. If he wants to pull a Le'Veon Bell and go ride the jet skis in Miami and drink cocktails, knock yourself out, you're not really that essential. You're not. Even as good as Saquon Barkley is with those legs that are like tree trunks, every running back is replaceable. In fact, just about everyone is replaceable because when I started watching football, not a single one of those players is still around, and they were all very important. Just ask them, and they would have told you how important they are.